Hello, this is a short video basically showing the changes made. This is alpha 0.000018. Don't ask. I'm not very official with any of the stuff yet. I'd hesitate to call it an alpha because currently it's the rough outline of the first intro area / level. There is other levels in working order, but this is the one that I chose to work on first since it's the first one. And I'm experimenting with game flow, so I want to, because I've got a story. I've written quite an expansive story about both the before and the during of the story is pretty much 100% at the moment. I've written the story quite expansive. The backstory is very, I won't say complex, but it's quite deep in terms of like I've went probably too far in explaining why characters are the way they are, and obviously I wanted to make that. Obviously, you're not going to be able to read up on the story anywhere. It's going to be solely in game, hopefully, and that way, like, I can then tell it through the game my own way. Essentially, the story's complete. It's just the way of translating it to the game, because obviously writing a story narrative wise, like as in book format, which I haven't read a book, but like in example, taking it from a book format where it's written up and then translating that to a game is fairly difficult. Anyway, I'm rambling. Excuse the monotone sexiness of my voice. It's 3 AM. I'm very tired, but I want to make this video. This is just basically showing you the changes. Everything you see in this video is completely placeholder, so it's probably not going to look like this by the time in about 2 months' time. Not that anything's happening in 2 months, but anyway, yeah. What was I saying? I'm mad, I think. Yeah, there's no sound in the game yet either. The reason why there's no sound currently is simply for the reason that I'm going to put in sound last. Sound's going to be the last thing to put into the first area, and the reason for this is because I'm finding it very difficult to get a cohesive sound palette together, essentially. So it looks like I'm gonna have to make a lot of the sound design myself, because with the art style, obviously it's low poly. That needs to be cohesive in order to make everything look like it fits. Same with the sound design, because obviously if I'm using sound clips from different websites and freeware and whatever. Anyway, I've rambled into the game. I'll be quiet for this bit. Right. And that's the intro. I will say everything you see there is shamefully extremely like basic and primitive, and the main reason for that is, can I shoot this down here? That's okay. The reason for that is so I wanted to get placeholder animations and models in, all of my own creation, but like placeholder models and stuff to essentially. Oh, bit of clip in there. Essentially, like, just show people the basic outline of what I want it to be, without spending 60 hours modelling an escape pod. You know what I mean? So anyway, so you'll be greeted with missions to start off with. These are just going to be a kind of like interactive tutorial, essentially, of, you know, here's a mission, is a point of interest. Essentially, go over there and inspect it. So I'll find the toolbox, bang. Right. What again? One's to get your hand lasers out, which is going to be your main primary attack. Right. Repair this. Danger detected. Survive. Now I've got to protect this and fight these off. These are of the Overseer's creation. However, spoilers, they're not in his control anymore. The Eye Thing's Overseer, by the way, again working title. Right. And if you see the black dots going up into the void, and then the void opening up, taking them, and then closing, basically they're not under his control anymore. This is the end of the universe, essentially. Death is closing in. Literally, the entity Death is closing in, and he's making good on his deal, essentially, with the Overseer, who was one of 5 other gods who made a deal with him in order to keep the void at bay, which is again the Death's domain, to keep that at bay so they could cultivate life. And in exchange, he gave them a parcel of the universe each to create worlds, such as the one I'm currently on, in order to cultivate and, create life, essentially. And the 5 gods create different varied amounts of life, massive variations. And this is the end of the universe, where all the gods are dead apart from the Overseer. And then Death's coming in to basically swallow up the rest of the universe with the void. And these enemies you see here are actually possessed by the void, essentially. Impending Doom's basically sent all the... not sentient, but sent all the races and species mad, essentially. And they're controlled by Death. There's a massive backstory as to why the deal was struck and the terms and conditions of that deal. For instance, the 5 gods were given their parcels of like the universe, or their sections of the universe, to cultivate life and the rest of it. But in exchange for basically Death can't intervene directly. In terms of, like, he can't actually come in and kill other gods himself, but he wants their souls, essentially. He wants their abilities. So he devised a plan in exchange for the life, or the lack of void. Death sold, well, not sold, but well, maybe. Death made a deal. You lot can have. Oh shit. That's fucked up. I'll fix that. Death essentially gave them that in exchange for a god war, essentially, and he said when the end comes, and when the end of the universe comes about, and the last stars start to burn out, you will all fight each other. You will all be compelled to fight each other for the last remaining resources. One sec. You'll be compelled to fight each other for the last remaining resources, and there can only be one left at the end of the universe, and that was the deal. They all needed to participate in the God War, essentially. Once the end came, sorry, and obviously in this story, again spoilers, the Overseer won. He wasn't actively fighting, but he won in the end, and his species won. But when the end of the universe came, he couldn't save his people. He couldn't save his fellow gods, and Death's closing in, essentially. Because Death by now is massively powerful. He's got 3 god souls. Spoilers, not all 5. Because he hasn't got the Overseers and 1 more. Everything you've seen is a placeholder. But your character, however, I mean, this is all like pre-game, because the game is currently set in a time where the end times is pretty much here. The final star is there, and it's your job to just find out what the fuck's happening, essentially. Again, I've probably butchered my own story. I haven't explained it very properly. Very properly, that's words. It is 3 a.m. This area you see here isn't done, so I shouldn't really be here, but I'm going to go here anyway. This will be a little valley with more enemies and more encounters. Okay, don't worry, that is going to be remodeled thoroughly. But I wanted to make... because I was trying to do with particles, see if I could do like particle effects. And instead all it's caused is like that to vibrate every time you move, which is very strange. But anyway, Yeah. But yeah, I think. By the way, that's the shore, and that's where you're gonna find the first door. But yeah, essentially, to ramble on a bit more. I mean, you've already hit 10 minutes, but to ramble on a bit more, I'm really hoping to tell the story in a vague manner. So the story's in the game if you pursue it. But if you don't, you'll still have enough information to make the story coherent. You know what I mean? Because the story isn't really about the deal with death so much. It isn't about the five gods. It's about your character, kind of. But it's mostly about your character's relationship to the Overseer and who the Overseer is and why he's doing what he's doing. You know, what he wants you to do, and why he's trying to constantly kill you. You know what I mean? And then also finding your place in this world. You need your character is, because your character is sentient. You're a robot, as you can tell. But you know, your main instinct is survival, and the first thing you do is you activate the radar, and then it shows you points of interest. And I'm gonna put a dialogue up where it says, you know, contact to ship not found. I mean signal to ship not found, and all the rest of it, and it'll explain that. Because at the start of the game, I am planning to make a kind of like static cutscene kind of thing. Like a 2D static animation cutscene, essentially. Of your ship, you escaping from a ship of sorts, but it's gonna be a complete red herring, because you didn't actually escape from a ship. That was just a previous memory that was corrupted, and it's not real. Essentially, what you emerged out of at the start of the game was a preservation pod. Because essentially, you're one of the Overseers. You're a member of one of the Overseer's original species, the ones he created at the advent of the universe. A species that he later shunned because they were too warlike. A play on the fall of man from the Bible, essentially. You know, the species that you belong to became too violent and aggressive, and began an expansionist and imperialist, and became basically something that the overseer believed to be completely flawed and of no use, essentially. And as a hands-on god, he blamed himself for your fall, essentially, your species' fall. So he shunned you, essentially, and he cut you off completely from his divinity because he was a very hands-on god, in the hopes that the lack of his influence would turn your race back to the peace-loving, cohabiting species that you once were. But that's not the case. So basically, your species, upon learning that you'd been shunned and abandoned, essentially, launched a project to encapsulate thousands of your race in preservation pods, virtually indestructible pods, and scatter yourself out into the universe, awaiting the end times, essentially, awaiting when the God War ends, awaiting when death has taken his prize, so your species can live out in relative harmony, essentially. Because by the time your race recognises that the end is coming, it's too late. So all this expansionism, all this imperialism, all this violence is completely redundant, because you're about to get consumed by the void. So they create these pods, and that's essentially what you escape from. But obviously, I'm not going to tell the player that. He's going to have to find out, because the player himself. I'm going to be deleting all these videos once I get to a point where the game gets a bit more fleshed out. Why is that doing that? It's very strange. It wasn't doing that in the last build. But anyway, yeah. So again, I want to tell the story through vague hints and subtle dialogue. Again, I'm going to get ragged over the coals for even making this reference, but I want to tell the story a bit like Destiny 1. And I know that sounds off the top of it ridiculous, because the game had no story. But I want to tell it through subtlety. I want the people playing to be actively interested in finding things out, because I hate obvious stories. And again, that's from what I was saying when I first launched the video. That's going to be the main difficulty. of making this game, because I know how to write salty, and I know how to write a complex story told subtly, and to keep interest. At least I think I can. The people who've read my stories seem to think so. But I don't know how to make a game that does that, because again, a game is less narrative. It's more events. What's happening? Why is it happening? And it also needs to be fun, and it needs to be entertaining, and there needs to be some sort of progression, both gameplay-wise and narrative-wise. And that's a very hard thing to marry together. Because in a book, you can set the pace, you can set everything just from the way you write it. You can add in filler. You can, there's a lot of techniques, and I'm very green, if you mind the pun, in game development at the moment. So I'm gonna try and look into that. For instance, and again, last thing I'm gonna say, the one thing I wanted to do was tell it through events. Essentially, so the event is you leave the pod, you encounter the overseer, and it's genuine surprise. Again, that's placeholder dialogue. I've actually got 3 different variations of the dialogue. One where he's more chatty, one where it's that way, it's just like 3 words, and there's another one where it's like he pretty much like off the bat hates you. But no, I went with that one because there's genuine surprise when he finds you. Because obviously you've just crashed into one of his mountains. And he finds you, and he's genuinely curious, and then he scans you, and he doesn't know what you are. And I want that to be an integral part, because at this point, he's pretty much forgotten about your species, because obviously he shunned you before the God War. You know what I mean? And also, you're that warped by the void yourself, because your pod spent a lot of time in it. He doesn't recognise what you are, so it's genuine surprise. Because he doesn't know what you are, which for the last remaining god in the universe is literally a new thing. Also, at the same time, it's he thinks you're a torment. Essentially, that's why he says the word "another evil." Question mark, obviously, asking himself, "Is this another evil?" Because while death can't directly influence, well, you can directly influence, but you can't directly act. So you can't just come down and kill the overseer. And you also can't cause something that kills him in so many actions. So again, the overseers, robots that I've been fighting during this demo, are basically void touch. So the death controls them. So he thinks that anything that appears randomly in the universe and in his vicinity, he believes to be a tormentor or something that will drive him to even further insanity. So that's what he believes you are, and that's why the majority of the game is going to be him trying to kill you, essentially. Because he's not actually one of the bad characters. Death's the main antagonist, but for the time being, Overseer will be. Anyway, that's enough. I've rambled for nearly 18 minutes. I apologise. Hopefully you've lasted through. I'd like to hear your opinions on it, to be honest. This video ain't going to stay up for long, because obviously narrative-wise, I don't want to keep it up while I'm developing, because then you'll know what happens. But yeah. Have a good one. This has been done with this test project I need a name for.